Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This tutorial is for the Isla bag by Bagstock Designs, and I'm in love with the design. It has some really awesome features. But before I discuss the features, there is something that I want to mention. This tutorial is filmed like a sew along. What that means is that no parts are sped up, no parts are cut out, you see me sew everything. However, there are times where we need to sew something more than once. So for example, there's two handles and a strap, two exteriors, we sew them to the gusset. So what I do is I show you how to sew it once, then I go off camera and I sew the others. I just feel that you don't need to sit there and watch me sew something more than one time. If you need to rewatch it, you can rewind and rewatch it and see all the steps again. I just really didn't want the tutorial to be too long, so I show you how to do it once and then I move on. And I go off camera and I sew it and then I come back. So now that I've discussed that with you, let's discuss some of the features of the Isla bag. First, you'll see that it's got handles, which are great for carrying it in your hand, on your arm, or you can even carry it on your shoulder. Now, the nice thing about it is where this cutout is here, you can see the cutout, it doesn't hit your armpits because of that cutout. So it rests nicely under your arm, just like that. Love it. Then we have a crossbody strap, which is great for if you want to wear it as a shoulder bag. You can wear it as a shoulder bag by tightening the strap as tight as it can go, or you can wear it as a crossbody strap. So if you get tired of carrying it on your shoulder, you can go hands-free and wear it crossbody. It's great for when you're making a bag for someone that you don't really know, or you're not sure how they want to wear a bag, or craft markets or whatever. It's great to have a crossbody strap because then they have those few options. Then on the front of the bag, we have this zipper pocket here, which is quite large. And then the back is the same thing, but without a zipper pocket, but you still have that feature of the contrasting fabric across it so that it looks the same, but it's not, doesn't have that pocket. However, if you want, you can definitely add another zipper pocket here. If you're like me and you love pockets, you can go ahead and add another pocket. The top does close with a zipper, so it keeps all your items safe inside. And then when we open up the bag, you'll see it's nice and roomy. Lots of room, you can fit lots in there. We have a zipper pocket on one side, and it's quite a large zipper pocket. And then we have a slip pocket here that is divided into two. Now, I used my exterior fabric so that when you look into the bag, you can see the pocket quite easily. I just really like how it popped and added that bit of fun to the lining of the bag. And just like my gusset, I did the same thing with my gusset, and that was because when we close our bag, I wanted the top here to be all the same all the way around. I didn't want to have my orange lining sticking out. I wanted it to be the same all the way around. I love the shape. It's really nice and big and roomy. You'll fit lots of things in here if you're like me and you like to carry a lot. This will hold a lot. It really looks like it's a difficult bag, but I promise it's not. It really goes together quite easily, and I'm surprised at how fast it actually does come together. And I just love it. I love all the features. I think it's a gorgeous bag. I can see lots of different options for fabrics, materials. You could have a lot of fun with this. You can do some embroidery on the front here. You can use a panel. You can do whatever you want. It's a really fun bag, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody's versions. So let's get sewing our Isla bag. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is important because oftentimes designers give information regarding different materials you're using and different interfacings. So if you're using a specific material, you may need to cut your interfacings a particular way, or you may be able to omit your interfacing. So it's important to make note of that before you begin cutting. And it also familiarizes you with the construction of the pattern before you begin. So I've gone ahead and cut out all my pattern pieces off camera. And the reason why I cut them off camera is because it's for the protection of the designer. So you'll notice that I don't give any measurements. I show no rulers, no pattern pieces, nothing in my tutorials. And that's because of the protection for the designers, but also because I do film during testing, and sometimes patterns can change in terms of measurements for where, say, some hardware will go, or a measurement for a strap. Things can change during testing dependent on what the feedback is. So I never give these measurements because I don't want it to affect my tutorial. So this way you're able to follow along and still make the bag and not have to worry about any confusion. So you will want to have your pattern open and available beside you, either on your computer or printed, so that you can follow along and refer back to any measurements or anything that you need to refer to. So now that I've got my pattern pieces cut out, I have attached all my interfacings as per the instructions. So I have done it. So you'll notice on these pattern pieces, which is pattern piece F, the handle connector, I have added my interfacing down the center as instructed. Now I am using a vinyl, so I didn't need to use any woven interfacing on these. So you'll notice that in some of my pattern pieces. And I have also made markings where markings need to be made. And I'm just trying to find a pattern piece that has markings made on it. So for example, you can see it here on my gusset. I've gone ahead and made markings, again, because I don't want to show rulers and I don't want to have to stop the camera so much to go off, make the marks and come back. So this just makes it a little bit more quicker for me when I'm doing the tutorial for you. So you can go ahead and do the same thing. You can make all your markings. I've also marked the center points on my pattern pieces. So you'll see the center points. And I've also marked on some of the pattern pieces where the top is with a T. And you'll also notice I've marked all the pattern pieces with their corresponding letter. And that just makes it easier when we get to that step when I'm looking for that pattern piece. And actually, I put my pattern pieces in order of what I'm going to be using them as I'm going through the pattern, and I did that while I was preparing for the tutorial. Another thing I've done is put all my hardware in a bag, and that just keeps it all together so I don't lose anything. And I've labeled all my zippers with what they're going to be used for. So that just makes it a little bit easier. They're all in one handy dandy little bag. I don't lose anything because that's happened before. So now we're ready to get started making our bag. So I'm going to put this off to the side and drop some things. And that's another reason why I clip pieces like this together, because I did just drop that. And I have dropped these pieces and lost one of the little pieces. So I just keep them clipped together now. So if you've already gone ahead and attached your interfacing, you can get started. If not, please attach the interfacing as per the instructions. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our handle connectors, which is piece F, and we also need G. And I'm going to use some double-sided sticky tape here. Now, in the pattern, you are instructed to mark a line down the center, and I know it's a little bit hard to see on these because I put the interfacing over it, but maybe you can see it. Yeah, you can just see it there. So I have marked the center. So you want to mark a center down the entire length of the pattern piece. And then if you're using vinyl like I am for this step, or for this pattern piece, sorry, you can put some double-sided sticky tape down the center of each of the pieces. If you're not, you're able to take this to your iron and do this step. You don't need to use the tape. I'm just adding it down the center. And these are my piece G here. So I used quilting cotton for the G pieces, which is the side connectors, and I've used vinyl for piece F, the handle connectors. So if you're using quilting cotton, you can take this to your iron, and what you'll do is you'll fold the long edges in to meet in the center and you'll press it. Now a little tip here to get it a really nice crisp press like that, I like to spritz it with some water and then press it with my iron, and I find it really helps make these edges really crisp. Just makes it nicer. So if you're using vinyl, we're just folding the long edges in to meet in the center. And I'm sticking it down. The double-sided tape is holding it in place. Just like that. So they will all look like this, folded with the long edges meeting in the center. So now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch all around the handle F connectors using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And you can use your favorite top stitch length. So I'm just top stitching down the sides of F right now. You'll want to cut all your threads. You might be wondering why it looks like I'm cutting over the floor. I promise there is a garbage right here, although sometimes I don't hit it and then I see threads on the floor and I think it's a spider. All right, so here are my F's all top stitched. So I'm going to clip these together for now. I can only do 2 at a time. There we go. And now we have folded the G connector as well. So we're going to just put that to the side until we need to make the G connector. We're going to grab out our hardware, and that is our rectangle rings. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold the connector in half. So this is connector F, we're folding it in half, and we're going to slide the rectangle ring onto the connector. I lost my clip. We'll place a clip on the end, and we'll do that for all 4 connectors. And if your rectangle ring is like mine where it has the joint, a little area where it's joined, I like to tuck that in the middle of the fold just to hide it. Just like that. So now we're going to sew along the raw edges. So along this short raw edge here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So you'll notice that I'm starting with my needle down, and that just prevents any shifting when you start with your needle in the down position. So I turn my hand wheel to put my needle down into my material, and then I start stitching. I find if I start stitching, so like I did on one here, and I'll show you, it didn't shift too much, but it did. But it shifts a little bit so that the edges don't stay lined up. Lots of threads on that one. So you can't really tell, and now I'm not going to find it. I think it's this one. No, it's this one. So it might be hard to see, but because I started with my needle up and then I started stitching, it shifted this so that these edges don't line up anymore. And it's just slight because I was able to stop it and help it not shift so much. But that's why I start with my needle down in my material first, and then I start stitching. This way here, nothing shifts and the sides stay all nicely lined up. Now, you can, if you want to, sew close to your D-ring across the top here with a zipper foot. However, I'm not going to. We're going to be adding rivets later, so I'm going to leave it. So these four here, we're going to put to the side for now. I'm just going to put them back in my bag of hardware, just so they don't get lost and I know where they are later. And now those G connectors that we used, so you have these here. We're going to fold them again. If you haven't, you're folding them just like we did with the F connectors, and we're going to stitch all the way around the connectors. So we're doing the same thing we did with the F connectors. With these ones, you'll notice though that we are stitching all the way around the entire rectangle. And when I backstitch, I like to try and backstitch on the short end because I know that that's going to be hidden later. Trim all your threads. And now we need to grab our D-rings. Now, if you don't have D-rings, you can use triangle rings here if you want. You can also use rectangle rings if you really want, if you don't have the D-rings. Same thing as we did with connector F. Of course, I can't get it there. Fold it in half, slide the D-ring on, make sure the short edges line up. I'm just going to leave that on the floor and hope I don't squish it when I roll. Return your stitch length back to the length you like to use when you construct your bag. You don't want to forget to do that. And I'm going to put these away into my bag with my hardware. That's how they look. You can do the same thing, stitch as close to the hardware if you want. You'll want to use a zipper foot to get nice and close without hitting your hardware. I'm leaving it just like that, because again, I know we are attaching some rivets later. Now what we need to do is we need to attach those handle connectors from F that we did. So I'm going to grab those back out. Maybe I should have just put them off to the side and not in the bag. We're going to grab our exterior top. So you have two exterior tops. And there is a measurement in the pattern that you're going to use. So I did the measurements on the back, you can just so I can show you on camera. So you want to mark the center. So you can do that by folding your pattern piece in half and then finding your center point. And then you want to measure from your center point to the left and to the right. And you want to do that on both pieces. Now, I do have it on the right side, but because of my material, it's a little bit hard for you to see. That's why I did it on the back side. So again, find your center, and you're going to use the measurement given in the pattern to measure from to the left and to the right. So from the center to the left, from the center to the right. And you'll want to do that with both pieces. Once you have that done, You will then take your handle connectors and you will place them on your top panel A, and you're going to place them to the side of the mark. So here's the center and here's my mark here, and I'm placing it right on the outside of the mark. So not inside, on the outside. And just clip it in place. And you're lining up the raw edges with the raw edge of your top panel. So just like that. So again, short raw edge of your handle connector lined up with the raw edge, the long raw edge of your top panel. So they look just like that. And again, my center, and I measured over, and they're right on the outside of the line. So there's my line right here. You can see it right here. I'll show you on the back side. So there's my mark, and my connector is right here. I don't know why I grabbed my scissors. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch these in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, start with your needle in the down position so that nothing shifts on you. Trim all your threads. I'm going to leave those on the back. They're not going to be seen. And then you have a piece that looks like this with your connectors attached. Just like that. So we're going to put these to the side, and we're going to move on to the next step, which is the exterior front, building that zipper pocket. So you'll want to grab your zipper for the zipper pocket, and that will be your exterior zipper pocket. And I don't have my pull attached yet, so I'm going to attach it after. I'll show you how I do that. Here to remind me. Okay, so we have our exterior zipper pocket zipper. Now we need to grab our, just want to see, exterior middle B piece. And that is this. It says B and B1 is what they are called. So we want these. And we're going to place our zipper. So you want to place B right side up, and you want to place the zipper on top so that it matches the long edges. And you're going to place the zipper right sides down against the right side of your B piece. So just like this. So here's my zipper, here's the right side. I'm flipping it over, and it's right sides down. And we're lining up those raw edges. now we're going to stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Just like that. Trim any threads. You just don't want those peekabooing later. So now you have a piece that looks like this. Now we need to take our exterior zipper pocket lining piece E, and we need to place it so that it is on top of the exterior middle B that we have sewn to this zipper. So right now the zipper will be sandwiched between the two panels. So you're looking at the wrong side of the zipper. So you're placing this so it is lining E right sides against the wrong side of the zipper. And you want to make sure you're lining up the right edges. I almost flipped mine the wrong way, if you saw that. So now I'm going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern, and I'm going to change to a zipper foot here. All right, so now I'm going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So all the way across. Trim your threads. Now we're going to press both these panels away from the zipper. And because I used vinyl, I can't take this to my iron and press it. However, if you're using quilting cotton, you can take it to your iron and press it. I'm just going to give the lining side a press. And now we're going to top stitch. So I like to top stitch with my other foot because I am using vinyl and it's very humid here. It'll stick with my regular foot. So now we're going to top stitch. So we're going to press these so that your B piece is wrong sides together with your E piece. And your zipper is up. And you're top stitching through all of that. That's how it looks so far. So I've top stitched right under that zipper all the way across that edge, and I'm returning my stitch length back to the length I use for stitching a bag. Now we need to flip this over so we're looking at the lining of E, so we're looking at the pretty side, and you're going to take this bottom edge of the zipper pocket and bring it right sides together with the top edge of the zipper. So just like that. So I folded it up. So the right side of the lining is against the wrong side of the zipper. I've got some threads here from the material I'm just going to cut off. They're kind of getting in my way. So I'm just pinning it in place, and then I'm going to stitch this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So it looks like this when we flip it over to the right side. And this first stitching here, don't concern yourself too much if it's not super accurate. It is just a basting stitch, so it doesn't need to be super accurate and super pretty. Do not worry about that. Switching back to my zipper foot for now. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to take the remaining B panel and we're going to place it right sides together with the right side of the zipper. So right now, this is how I'm looking at my piece. I'm seeing the B panel that we've already attached and the right side of the zipper. So you're seeing the right side of the zipper teeth. I'm going to attach this, pin it together along the long edges. So the same edge we just sewed the zipper to the bottom of our zipper pocket, that's where you're attaching this. So just like that. So there's B, the right side of the zipper, and the other piece, and the zipper pocket is folded up behind. We're going to stitch this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. All right, trim all your threads. And then I'm going to change my zipper foot again, back to my regular foot. Now what we need to do is flip this piece B that we just attached up. We're not moving anything else, just B is going up. We don't want to put the pocket under there, so just flipping middle B and B1 up. So just like that, and we're going to top stitch that seam. So nothing else is under there, you've just flipped up B away from the zipper. And you have a piece that looks like this once you have it all top stitched. And your pocket is underneath. Now, you need to measure this piece. There's a measurement that is given in the pattern for how wide this piece here needs to be. So we need to go make the measurement, and if it is not, you'll trim any excess from both panels. Now, if yours is too wide, you want to make sure that you're keeping your zipper center, and in order to do that, what you do is you measure from the center of the zipper up and you trim the same amount from both the top and the bottom of the top panel and the bottom panel of B. So you will trim the same amount from both B panels. That way there, you keep your zipper nice and centered. So I'm going to go measure this, and then I'm going to come back and we will continue constructing our bag. I will also add my zipper pull because you don't really need to see me do that on camera. I have a tutorial that I can attach in the description for you to see how I put my zipper pull on. So I'll go and do that. I'll measure, and if I need to trim, I will trim. Okay, so my panels had to be trimmed just a slight little bit. And like I said, I took the same amount off both B panels. So I measured from the center up just to make sure that my zipper stayed centered on my panels. Now we still need this, but we need to get our exterior bottom D, the one without the heavy stabilizer. So you did put a heavy stabilizer on one of the other pieces. You want the piece without it right now. And I actually fussy cut my panels, so I just want to make sure I'm using the right ones. Yep. To make sure everything lines up. So there is a note in the pattern, and I do want to read it to you, and it says, no, we didn't attach the exterior bottom D and exterior front middle B earlier, even though it would have made things easier. Zipper seam allowances can vary from person to person, so we need to trim the finished panel to the correct size later, equally from both panels. That wouldn't have been possible if we attached the exterior bottom D and exterior middle front B earlier. So this just makes things a lot easier because, as she says, sometimes depending on your machine, you and yourself, you may sew with different seam allowances. So this gives us a chance to correct any sewing errors when we trim. So now we're going to take the bottom D piece and the one without the stabilizer and place it right sides up. Then we're going to take this exterior front middle and place it on top of it right sides down. So the right side, the pretty side, will be down. So we're going to place it like this, and you're going to line it up. Now you can line up your center marks. Oh, my zipper was there. If you have a dangly zipper like I do, just make sure it's not up in that seam allowance. So I'm matching up my center mark, and I'm matching up the bottom raw edge of the, hang on a second, I just want to make sure I have the right way. Okay, going back. So we have this, and you're matching the bottom edge of the exterior middle D. So when you're doing this, you're taking this and it's the bottom edge. So this is how it looks. This is the bottom edge. So the edge where the zipper pocket is. So this piece here is what we're lining up, and I'm glad I caught that, with the top raw edge of our D piece. So line it up all the way across. And again, I matched up my center points. So right now, when we flip it, it's going to be like that so that your zipper pocket is behind your D piece. So you want to make sure you have that bottom. So when you're looking at this on the right side, so you're looking at the right side, it's the bottom piece. So if it makes it easier for you, after you've done constructing, mark a T on the top piece, which is above the zipper pocket. So here's our zipper pocket at the bottom. This part is the top, and I marked a T. And that way there you'll know and you won't get confused later. So now that I have this pinned, I'm going to sew along the edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I just need to see what that is. And if you changed your stitch length, please put it back to the length you use when you stitch a bag together. And if you have a dangly zipper, make sure that zipper pull is out of the way so you don't hit it. Don't want to break any needles or damage. And I think, and I did it. Well, this is a good lesson for on camera. I didn't pull my zipper pocket completely out of the way, and now my zipper pocket got stitched in. So I'm just going to snip those few stitches. I was more concerned about my zipper pull than the pocket. And I'll go back and back stitch over that area to lock in those previous stitches, keeping my zipper pull and my pocket out from under my needle. Sometimes it's good for you to see these little mistakes that are made. Luckily, it was caught in time. So that's how it's going to look. Right now, you're going to be seeing the wrong side of the pocket and the wrong side of your D piece. Now, it says to trim your seam allowance. So I'm going to do that. So I trimmed my seam allowance. Then we're going to flip this D panel and press it. And again, I've used vinyl here on the B, so I don't want to take that and press it with my iron. So I'm pressing it down. And I always forget I do have a little seam roller, but I always forget I have that because, you know, my hands are always here. So it's going to look like that. So now we're going to flip the zipper pocket up out of the way, and if it helps you, add some clips to keep it up out of the way because we don't want to have an accident. Just like that, and we're stitching just through the D panel here. So just through this, your top stitching. Oh, it's pulling on my microphone. And again, be careful if you have that dangly zipper like I do. You don't want to hit that as you're stitching. So I've top stitched just through D, and the reason why you didn't want your pocket down was because if you top stitched through that, you would close your pocket and you wouldn't be able to get into it. So flatten out your pocket. And now what we're going to do is I'm just going to add some clips because we're going to stitch around our pocket and our D piece here. So we're going to stitch all the way around here. Now, here you don't have to stitch, but I'm going to just to continue stitching. And make sure your zipper is centered. And you can leave this at a longer stitch length because we're just basting it in place. But I'm going to back stitch here just to ensure that it stays locked. And back stitch there again. Trim your threads. Now, you will also need to trim the excess, and if your zipper is longer, you'll want to trim the zipper as well. I had made my zipper to length. So trim the pocket, following the D. You want to make sure you follow that curve, so you keep the same shape. And your panel will look just like this right now. And your pocket, when you reach inside, will look like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch over where my zipper is so that my zipper pull does not come off. And I'm just creating a stop basically, so you're back stitching over it. And then when I move my zipper open and closed, the zipper won't accidentally come off the zipper tape. So there's that so far. Now we're going to grab our top panel A piece and we need to attach it to this completed piece here. So what we're going to do is leave this face up. We're going to take our top exterior A piece, or exterior top, sorry, and we're going to place it right sides down so the long straight edge is aligned with the long straight edge of the B panel that we just attached, or we just completed here on this exterior piece. Now you'll want to line up center points again. Line them up, pin everything together. Now you may find that your machine has a little bit of a hard time going over the bulk of your connector here. If you have a humper jumper, you can use a humper jumper to get over it. That'll help you get nice and over that area without any issues. So I'm going to stitch straight across using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, if you need to use a humper jumper, use a humper jumper to get over that bulky area where your rectangle rings are. That's what they are. I want to make sure I was saying what they were. Make sure your rectangle rings are flipped down. The machine just hit my nail. And your zipper pull too. I just saw it dangling here. If it was the other way, it would have been under my needle. Keep your rectangle rings down and out of the way. Oops. Now we're going to flip the top exterior A piece up, and I can see a thread here poking out. And again, I've used vinyl, so I cannot press at my iron. Oh, I didn't trim my threads. So now I'm going to top stitch all the way across. Go to my top stitch length that I like to use. Oops. Hang on. I'm top stitching on the wrong thing, so I've just told you something wrong. I pressed it the wrong way. Okay, so we have to press it up. So we're pressing the top panel up, and that'll force your connectors to also go up. And again, yes, I can't press at my iron because I did use vinyl. So I'm going to have to just hold it in place as I top stitch across the top. So it'll look like this, and those connectors will be pointing up. If you're using vinyl like I am, take your time. Make sure that that stays pressed up so that the top is going down towards the D panel. All that bulk is going down, and you want those connectors to stay up. There, just like that. So it looks like this once that's done. This looks really pretty. And it looks like the flowers continue. That's why I fussy cut that. So again, that's how that looks. Now we're going to put this to the side for a moment, and we're going to create the exterior back. So you need your top piece, your C piece, and your D piece. So what we're going to do is take the top piece, we're going to place it so it is right sides up. Make sure your rectangle rings are pointing up. And this piece here, you want to make sure you have it so that it is oriented where the top is. So you may want to use your pattern piece to see where the top is and where the bottom is, because you want that to line up. So we're going to take this and we're going to place C on top so that it is the top of C is aligned with the bottom straight edge of A. So just like this, right sides together. And I'm going to clip it in place. Lining up my center marks. So just like that, and then we're going to stitch along the top edge, the edge here, using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Don't forget to return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching a bag together. Again, use a hump or jumper here if you need to. That's stuck. We're going to flip just like we did with the front, so that the connectors face up towards the top of the panel, top panel, and then we're going to top stitch this. So your bulk is going down towards the C panel. And again, you can use a humper jumper here to help get over the bulk if you're having issues. That's how it looks so far. So now we're going to take the remaining exterior bottom D piece, and that's your piece with that stabilizer attached, and we're going to place it right sides up. Then we're going to take this exterior back top piece, this is what this is called now, exterior back top, and we're going to place it so it is right sides together. So you're going to line up the bottom raw edge of what was C with the top long raw edge of D. Again, lining up your center points. And we're going to stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Don't forget to return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching bags. So now we need to top stitch this edge that we just attached. So you're going to press it so that the seam allowance goes up towards the top panel. And I'm just pressing it with my hands because, again, I can't take it to my iron because I've used vinyl. And I'm going to top stitch on top of that middle piece. So you're top stitching on C, just like we did when we top stitched the top. Foot pedal was getting a little too far away from me. Turning my stitch length, and that is how your exterior back looks when you have it all sewn. Now we need to take our foam stabilizer. That just scared me. That was my cane falling. Our foam stabilizer, and we need to attach it to our exterior front and our exterior back pieces. And you'll want to do this by base stitching all the way around. So I'm going to line up my center marks because I have all my center marks made. Sometimes what I also like to do instead of base stitching is use double-sided tape to help hold it in place. So I'll place double-sided tape all around the edges, and I'll stick it down with double-sided tape. But for the tutorial, I will do it exactly as she has it written. want to make sure you're smoothing it out. All right, so now we're going to base stitch all the way around, and you can use a long stitch length for this. And you're just going to go all the way around the panel using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, you're staying within that seam allowance, but your stitching doesn't have to be super fantastic and pretty. You're just attaching this panel to your foam. So I'm just going across the top edge here. Now I'm going to go around this curve. So once I get this one finished, I'll go off camera and I'll stitch the other foam to the exterior front. You don't need to sit and watch me do this twice. It's kind of boring if you do. There we go. It's attached to my foam. I'll put this to the side and I will now go and attach my exterior front to my foam. So I'll pause the camera and then I will come back and we will continue on. All right, so I have that foam attached to my exterior front. And the other thing I did was I went ahead and attached my rivets using the measurements given in the pattern. If you do not have rivets, you can sew a little box. You'll want to have your zipper foot on, but you can sew a little box around with an X in it. The X will add extra security, but it'll also give it a little bit of a design feature. That's if you want. You don't have to. You can use Chicago screws here as well, but that's just if you want, and that's how they look on both the panels. Now again, the rivets, they are optional. You can use stitching, like I said, sew a box with an X in it, and that'll help add all the extra security of the connectors, but also add a little design feature as well. Or use Chicago screws. Moving right along, we're going to attach our connectors to our gusset. So we need our gusset connector. We need our connectors. Sorry, I was just reading. We need our G connectors. So that's what we did earlier with the D rings attached, or triangle rings, whichever you've used. And in the pattern, there is a mark that you need to make for how far down we're going to place this and centered. So I've already made that mark. You'll see the second mark here as well. That's for when we attach our gusset strip. So you're going to place these centered. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this, and it's the top edge of your connector is going to line up with that line, and it's going to be centered. Now, you can use a little piece of double-sided tape here if you want, just to help hold it in place, or you can just hold it with your hand as you're stitching, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to roll this end up so it can get underneath my machine. And I'm just centering this, making sure the top edge of that connector is lined up with the line, right under the line. So I'm going to sew it in place. Forgot to return my stitch length back to my length I use when stitching. So there's one, and there's 2 rows of stitching that we're making. And I'm going to trim my threads after I get this second one attached. And I'm just really being careful to make sure it's centered. So I'm doing the 2 rows of stitching as given in the pattern. And I'm not super concerned about the threads behind this because that's not going to be seen, but I want to cut my threads on the front where the connectors are. So that's how it's looking so far. Now we need to take our gusset strip, and you're folding this the exact same way we folded F and G. You're marking a line down the center and you're folding the long edges in to meet in the center just like that. So you end up with a finished piece like this. Then what we're going to do is take some double-sided tape and I'm going to place it on the center of this strip. If I can find the end. And this is just going to hold this strip in place while I sew it so it doesn't shift on me. And you're going to place this at that mark given in the pattern. So there is a mark that you need to use, a measurement and a mark for where this is going to be placed. And where you're placing this, it covers up the raw edge and the stitching. Just make sure it's straight. Now we're going to stitch this all around. If you need to use a zipper foot to get past that hardware, go ahead and use a zipper foot. So I'm stitching all around this gusset strip. I will trim my threads after. I'm going to also need to take a wet cloth and wipe off the chalk, but I will do that after as well. Just trimming my threads, and then I'm going to trim the gusset strip so that it is even with the side edges of the gusset. So just trim it down. And that's how it's looking so far. Very nice. Now you can attach a rivet here if you would like. I'm going to go off camera and attach a rivet. You can also attach a Chicago screw. Another option is the same thing. You can sew a box and an X, or you can just sew a big X through this right now and sew around again a second time and then do the X, and then it adds a decorative feature but also great for security. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to go do that, and then I will come back and we'll continue on. And sorry, I meant a box. You could sew around this entire outer edge again and sew a box just where your connector is, and then sew an X in that. So I'm going to go off, measure, and install my rivets, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so my rivets are all installed. This is how it looks, and I even wiped off the chalk markings as well. So that's how your gusset looks. We're going to put the gusset to the side for now, put it with the rest of our exteriors, and we're going to move on with our interior zipper pocket. So you need to draw a box, or a rectangle, sorry, on the wrong side of your interior zipper pocket facing. That's your L piece. So you need to draw the box on the wrong side, and you'll see that I've already done this. So you'll go ahead and use the measurements given in the pattern to draw that rectangle. I'm folding this in half so that I can place it on my exterior, on my lining after, centered. Now what we need to do is create that zipper pocket. So the first thing you need to grab is your interior zipper pocket zipper and your two interior zipper pocket pieces. So these two here. And what you're going to do is you're going to place your interior zipper pocket piece right sides up, and you're going to place your zipper right sides up on top of it. So the wrong side of your zipper is against the right side of your zipper pocket panel, which is piece M. I just had to make sure, although I should have it written on the back. I do. So it's piece M that we're attaching the zipper, and you're lining up the long straight edges at the top. So then we're going to stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim your threads. And what I like to do here is press the fabric away from the zipper. Then we take our remaining zipper pocket piece with it right sides up. We're placing the zipper again, wrong sides against the right side of the zipper panel M piece, or zipper pocket, sorry, M piece. We're going to stitch that again using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim any threads, press the panels away from each other. I always like to do that. And this is what it looks like on the lining side. So the wrong side of my zipper is against the lining side. The right side of my zipper, I'm looking at it against the wrong side of the material. I'm going to attach my zipper, or my zipper pull. My zipper pull is on now. Now we're going to stick this to the side. Grab one of your lining panels. And there's a mark that you need to make on the lining panel from the top down. And I've already gone ahead and done that. You can see it there. I'm going to grab out my pins. So this piece here, your zipper pocket facing, the one that you drew the box on, we need to place this centered on this panel. So in order to find your center, what you can do is just fold it and press it in half, which I've already done. It creates a crease. And you'll fold this one wrong sides together and press it in half, and that'll create a crease. Then the top edge of your facing will line up with that line you made, and you're lining up the center mark as well, or your center crease. So top edge of the zipper pocket facing is aligned with the line you drew down from the top edge. So there's my line, and the top edge of my facing is right at the line. So see it? And then my zipper facing is right at the line. Now we're going to stitch around that box we created. Don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. You're stitching directly on top of the box you drew, or in this case, rectangle. Now, when you get to this corner, in order to avoid the angled stitches, I bring my stitch length all the way to 0, take one stitch, return my stitch length, turn my fabric, and continue stitching. And that just ensures that it locks in that stitch and I don't get the angled stitch in the corner. And I do that at every corner. And I don't need to do it here because I'm back stitching. But now I don't have those angled stitches in the corners. Next, we need to cut a hole down the center of our zipper pocket facing. And you may have drawn a line down the center and then 2 triangles at the end. I didn't do that. I just go ahead and cut. And I cut into the corners. Now be careful when you're cutting into the corners that you don't snip any stitches. And I'll show you what you can do if you accidentally do snip stitches. So say you snip your stitches in one of your corners. What you're going to do is come up at the top, back stitch over top of your previous stitches, go all the way around and come down at the bottom and back stitch over previous stitches. This will help re-stitch those corners, and it'll also lock in your previous stitches so they don't come undone. And that's what you can do to save the stitching. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press this zipper facing so that it goes wrong sides against the wrong side of the lining panel. And you're going to need to go to your iron to give this a really good press. Unless you're using vinyl, then you're going to have to press it with your fingers and use some double-sided tape to hold it in place. So we're going to press that in place. Now what I like to do is, as you just saw there, I've pressed it with my fingers. But usually what I do is I press these with my iron. I give it a press. So I push this up, press, push this down, press, push these into the side and press them. Then what I do is I flip it so that it comes wrong sides together. And I press it. So I roll this with my fingers and I press it with my iron. And I do that all the way around. Then I take my water bottle and I spritz it and I press it again. And what this does is it keeps it really crisp. And you have a really nice, crisp, pressed, boxed opening for your zipper. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to go press my zipper opening, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so I've pressed my zipper pocket facing nice and flat, just like that, the way I explained it. Now we're going to grab back that zipper pocket we created. We're going to add some double-sided tape to both the long edges of the zipper. Just like that. And then we're going to center the lining panel on top of the zipper. So we're centering the zipper in that opening that we created. And you'll notice that your zipper facing, or zipper pocket facing, is the same width as your zipper pocket, so you can actually use that as a guide to get it centered. So just like that. I'm going to use some clips to help hold this down so that I don't accidentally press it underneath. And I'm going to use some pins to hold the zipper down here so it stays open. We want this zipper pocket to be open right now. We don't want it to be underneath our zipper window. Now we're going to stitch all the way around this window. When you approach your zipper pull, lift your zipper foot. Make sure your needle is down before you lift your zipper foot. Slide your zipper out of the way, put your presser foot back down, and continue on. Needle down, presser foot up, slide zipper pull out of the way, presser foot down, continue on. Trim your threads. I'm going to remove my pins and my clips. Oops. And now it looks like this with our zipper pocket open. Now we want to flip it over, so we're looking at the wrong side, and bring our zipper panels down. Clipping it along the side edges. And before we sew anything, we're going to trim this zipper panel here that is longer than the other one. So we're going to trim them so they're the same length. You can just do as I'm doing, trim it with your scissors, or if you want, you can take it to your cutting mat and use your rotary cutter and ruler to really measure it and get it straight. I prefer the way it is, so I'm not going to, doesn't bother me if it's not straight, just get it trimmed fast. Now we need to press these edges up. There's a measurement given in the pattern, and I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm used to measurements. Let's see if I'm accurate. And I'm bang on with the measurement. That's hilarious. And I'm going to flip the other side so that it is the same. I just don't want to get up and have to go to my iron again. And what this does is this will help when we turn the bag right sides out. It'll make it so that these are easier to press or easier to stitch closed because you already have those edges pressed. Now move your lining panel out of the way, and we're going to stitch the sides of our zipper pocket. You're stitching them closed. Make sure you back stitch at start and stop. And I go all the way up over the overlay. So I include the overlay in my stitching. If you need to, trim your zipper so it is even and don't have a lot of overhang. And now you'll see we have the opening for our zipper pocket, and this is so that we can turn our bag right sides out later. We'll put this to the side for now. We need to grab our interior slip pocket pattern pieces. This is this is N. We need N, sorry. So both piece, I should have just flipped it over and looked. Both piece ends, and you'll notice I did something different. In the pattern it says to cut 2 from your lining. I wanted 1 from my exterior and 1 from my lining, and this is so that the pocket will stand out. See how it stands out when it's inside the bag, and you'll be able to see it. Oh, I better grab the right one. So now we're going to place these so that they are pretty sides together, or right sides together. Along the top edge is where we're going to clip, so along that top straight edge. And we're going to sew along that top straight edge only. And you're going to use the seam allowance given in the pattern. trimmed my threads. Then we're going to press this so it is wrong sides together. And what I like to do with this is press this seam open. And I will go do this with my iron, but I press that seam open and then I flip and press this all together. And I just really like how nice and crisp it gives me for that edge. I'm going to pause the camera, press this, and I'll be right back. So that edge is pressed. Now we need to top stitch across the top edge and all the way around. So I'm just going to add some clips just to hold everything in place. So use your top stitch length. And again, this stitching, the basting stitch that you did around the curve doesn't have to be perfect as long as you stay within the seam allowance. Don't panic, because mine is not perfect. This one thread is stuck and it doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. So that's how that looks so far. Now we need to take this slip pocket and place it on the remaining lining K panel. So I'm going to fold this in half right now so I get that center crease. And line it up with the center crease on my lining panel just to make sure everything's lined up. And now we're going to stitch all the way around this pocket. And I'm going to start from the bottom center. And the reason for this is so that the pocket doesn't shift. And I'm still using my basting stitch or top stitch length for this because we are just basting it in place. So going from the center up, oh, I ran out of thread. Going from the center up will prevent any shifting so that the pocket doesn't shift up or down on you. So I'm just going to wind a bobbin and then I'll top stitch or finish stitching this half on, and then I'll come back and we will stitch up the center to divide the pocket. All right, we're all set again, good to go. So now we're going to divide this slip pocket up the center, and I'm just going to follow that center crease that I created when I folded my fabrics. Make sure you stitch well at the top because there is a lot of stress on the pocket there when you're going into it. So make sure you stitch really well there, and that is how your pocket will look when it is done. Now, if you used directional fabrics, there are instructions for how to sew your gusset together. That's if you've used directional fabrics for your gusset. So if you have, you'll want to follow those steps, and all it is you take your two gusset pieces, you place them right sides together, and you sew along the bottom straight edge here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. You'll press it open, so you'll press those seams open, and then you'll flip it over and top stitch on either side of the seam with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And then you'll have your directional fabric for your gusset facing the correct way. You'll notice again, I used my exterior fabric for my gusset. I just wanted it to be a little bit fun when you looked inside the bag and you saw something different and it just sort of stands out. Just a personal preference. So now we're going to work on our main zipper closure. For that, we need our main zipper panels, and we need our main zipper closure zipper. And you can see we're slowly getting down on the hardware left in here. Put my zipper here so I don't forget to put it on. So on your zipper tape, if you're using continuous zipper like I am, you're going to make a mark. So measure and make a mark from the short edge down on your zipper tape. So we're going to pull this open, and then you're going to pinch it at that line, just like this. So you see how I pinch it so it goes wrong sides together? And then you're going to hold where you've pinched and bring the teeth up so that they go over or on top of where that pinch folded edge is. And I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel, which I'll link to below, on how to do this. It goes into more detail, but again, it's hard to see. So I'm going to pinch at that line so the fabric is wrong sides together. So I have a pinch and I'm holding that fold. And when you hold it, you'll notice that your zipper teeth naturally want to pop back up. While holding that fold, so there's the folded edge, bring the zipper teeth and the fold so that the folded edge goes under the zipper teeth, and it kind of creates a little L. You can see here it creates like a little L. And that folded edge is right underneath those zipper teeth. Everything's shifting on me. You're going to use some pins. And then we're going to stitch along the edge here to help hold the zipper tape in place. And again, I will post that link to that tutorial in the description. Trim your threads so it'll look like this. And then what I'm going to do is trim my zipper tape so that is even with the sides. You don't want that overhang anymore. Just like that. So now it's all nice and even. I'm going to leave the zipper pull off for now. That's just a personal preference. You can go ahead and put your zipper pull on if you want, but I'm going to leave it off for now. And again, it's just because it makes it easier when I'm adding my panels. I don't have to worry about moving my zipper pull out of the way. So now on your main zipper closures, there are some marks that you need to make, and you'll want to refer to the pattern for what the measurements are. And then we will take these and we will press them so that they are pressed at the measurement given in the pattern. And you'll put this, you'll take it to your iron and press it. So I'm going to go do that with my 2 exteriors and my 2 linings, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. So I've pressed the ends of my zipper panels, just the one end, so not both short edges, just the one short edge, using the measurement given in the pattern, and I've done this for the exteriors and the linings. Now we need to attach our zipper to our zipper panels. Now I've fussy cut my zipper panels so that everything lines up. As you can see here, my flowers will still line up. So I need to make sure I'm placing them in the correct position. You will want to make the mark for where your zipper is going to be placed from the short unfolded edge of your zipper panel. So I've already gone ahead and done that, and I know it might be a little bit hard to see. I think you might be able to see it right there on this one. So I've already gone ahead and made the mark on my exteriors for where I'm going to be placing my zipper on this. So this is how I want these to be because they are fussy cut so that the flowers line up. So I'm going to move one exterior out of the way. I have one exterior zipper panel facing right sides up. I'm working from the end that is not folded. The folded end is on the other side, and the folded end will be where the tail of my zipper is. So taking the end of your zipper that we turned at a 90-degree angle and lining it up with that mark we made from the raw edge of the zipper panel, we're lining it up with that mark, and then we're going to pin this in place. Now another thing you can do is you can also use double-sided tape here if you would like. And maybe I'll do that just to show you. Double-sided tape is great because it'll hold everything in place for you and nothing will shift while you're sewing. So it keeps that zipper in place. And another thing you can do with the double-sided tape is instead of base stitching your zipper in place, the double-sided tape will hold it for you so you don't have to do any of that base stitching. So what you can do is add your zipper, then put the lining on. Oh, it didn't work when I folded it. Put the lining on top and then just stitch it all together, and then you're kind of skipping one step and it's a little less sewing for you. I don't know why this is fighting with me today. Can't get it to peel back. All right, so I've added a line of double-sided tape to the top raw edge, starting from where that mark is, going all the way across. Now I'm going to place my zipper so it is right sides down, lining up that folded edge of the zipper, so where the zipper was folded at a 90-degree angle with that mark I made. And then the raw edge of the zipper tape will line up with the top raw edge of my zipper panel. And I'm placing it all the way across. And then you see how it just holds it in place for me? So that's like basting stitches too. Now I am still going to stitch it because it does say this in the pattern, and just to stick with what the pattern is saying. But you could, if you're using basting tape, take your lining and place it right sides down on top so you create that zipper sandwich. And then you would just stitch it all together. Oh, my fan's making a funny noise. So I'm basting this in place. So I always start with my needle down so that it doesn't, the zipper doesn't shift on me in the beginning. Trim my threads. And now we have the first part of the zipper attached. Now we're going to repeat that for our lining. So we're going to take one of our lining pieces and we're going to place it so it is right sides against the wrong side of the zipper. So the pretty side of your lining is going to be against the wrong side of your zipper. We're creating a zipper sandwich. And you'll notice that the right side of your lining is against the right side of your exterior. So you'll know you have it right if that's how it looks. Now again, you can use some double-sided tape here. And you want to make sure that those raw edges line up. And I'm out of this double-sided tape. You want to make sure that those raw edges line up and that the folded edges of these zipper panels are on the same edge. So the zipper panel folded edges should be where your zipper tail is. And the zipper tail being this part where it's not attached to your zipper panel. And I'm just showing you the double-sided tape just so you can see that it doesn't shift. You don't have to use double-sided tape. So again, I'm making sure my folded ends here line up. Everything lines up nicely and neatly all the way across. And now we're going to stitch this. We're going to go up the short edge, stop, we're going to pivot and go across the top of the zipper here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Make sure this end of the zipper tape here that you have slightly open so the other side of the zipper tape doesn't get in your way. You don't want to stitch over that. Just, there we go. I'm making sure I sew it accurately, that seam allowance here. If you have to get an accurate seam allowance, take a smaller or a slightly smaller stitch length at that corner in order to get that accurate seam allowance. Oops. Make sure your zipper panels stay folded. And don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. That's how it looks right now, so it's all attached. Now we're going to trim our corner. This just helps reduce the bulk and makes turning that corner nicer. You'll notice I didn't trim where the zipper is. I just trimmed the material, so the fabric, not the zipper. Use your turning tool to poke out that corner nicely. And you'll see, I'm going to add some clips, and you'll see how this looks. Now, normally at this step, we would take this to our iron and we would give it a press. To prevent me from getting up again and down, I'm going to wait until I have the other side attached, and then I'll come and top stitch both edges. So I'm going to pause the camera for now. I'm going to attach the second side just as I did the first side. If you don't have double-sided tape, you'll just clip it in place instead of using the double-sided tape. And then I'll come back and we will top stitch the panels. So again, you're placing it so that it is right sides up, your exterior. Your zipper panel will go right sides down. Using the measurement away from the short raw edge, you'll line up that 90-degree angled edge of your zipper with that. Clip it in place, stitch this down using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Take your lining, place it right sides down, lining up those short raw edges and your folded edges. Clip it in place and then stitch this up the short edge and across the zipper using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Then you'll clip your corner, turn it right side out, and we'll top stitch. So again, I'm going to go sew the second side and then I'll come back, have it all pressed, and we will top stitch. All right, so I've sewn the second side and I've also given it a really good press. And I do the same thing with my zipper panels as I do when I'm pressing, say, that zipper pocket opening. I give it a spritz with water so it presses it really nice and flat for me. Now we're going to top stitch around the entire outer edge of our zipper panel. So we're going to start stitching. We'll go down the short side, across above the zipper or below the zipper, whichever way you're looking at it. And then you're going to go up the other short side and again down the raw edges. That'll hold the raw edges together for you. So let's go ahead and get started doing that. And I'm going to top stitch, or start top stitching, sorry, on the raw edge. That's just so that my back stitching will be hidden later in my seam. And remember, if you have to take a shorter stitch length to be able to keep your seam allowance even, go ahead and do that. And again, if you're worried about angled stitches, as I mentioned previously, you can go ahead, bring your stitch length to 0, take one stitch, return your stitch length back to what you were stitching at, and then turn the corner. And that'll ensure you don't get those angled stitches. Trim any threads. And then we're going to top stitch the second side. Same way. Oops. So make sure you trim all your threads. And there you go. That is how your recessed zipper your zipper panel will look when you're done. So this will be your main zipper closure. So now we're going to mark the center of our zipper closure, and to do that, what you do is just fold it so these short edges meet, and then we'll find the center. You can mark it within the seam allowance. Just like that. So I've got it marked. And now we're going to grab one of our lining panels, and the one that I'm grabbing is this one with the zipper pocket. Now, when I'm putting my main zipper closure on a bag that has a zipper pocket or an opening with another zipper, I always like to line it up so that the zippers all go the same way. So what I mean is they all open and close the same way. So this one opens to the left. I want this to also be opening to the left for this. So now I'm going to take some clips and I'm going to clip it in place. I'm going to line up the center mark so it is centered on my panel. And this is my lining panel. So my lining panel is right sides up and my zipper panel is right sides up. So the lining of my main zipper closure is touching the lining of my lining panel. So right now when I'm pinning it, I'm seeing the right sides of the lining and I'm seeing the exterior side of the main zipper closure. I still haven't attached my zipper yet, my zipper pull. I'm going to leave that to the end and I'll show you how I do that. So now we're going to stitch this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim my threads. We have that so far. So you'll see when you look at the lining, you see the lining of the main zipper closure and the lining panel are touching each other. Leaving this so that it is right sides up, so I'm looking at the exterior, we're going to take one of our top panels, so the top lining top, and we're going to place it so it is right sides down. So the right side will be against the right side, so the exterior of our zipper panel, or sorry, our main zipper closure. I keep calling it the wrong thing. So what you want is for it to look like this when it's finished. So you're going to take the long straight edge of the lining top and line it up with the long straight edge of your lining bottom. So find the centers, pin the centers together, and then clip it the rest of the way. And then we will sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now, if your zipper pull is attached right now, you'll want to be careful if it's dangly that you don't accidentally hit it. So just make sure that it's not in the way. Now we're going to press the lining top right side up and ensure that our seam allowance is pressed towards the lining bottom. So we're going to do this. Take it, press it up, and then turn it so your seam allowance goes down towards the bottom. Now you can take this to your iron and give it a press. I'm just finger pressing it. So now with all the bulk, you'll see it's going down towards the lining. We're going to top stitch on top of our lining. And there's a zipper pull. Trim any threads. And that's how that looks so far. So you have your half of your main zipper closure attached to your lining. Now we need to repeat those same steps for the remaining lining panel. So again, center mark of your zipper closure, pin it in place, clip it all the way across. I'm just going to pin this down out of the way. So I'm showing you this again just in case. So now I have my lining top. This is J piece. So this is how I want it to look. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to flip it so it's right sides against the right side of the main zipper closure. Long straight edges are lined up. Find the center mark, pin it in place, and then continue pinning all the way across. And then we are going to sew this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Again, press it so that the seam goes down towards your lining panel. And we'll top stitch that edge. So you're top stitching on top of your lining panel. So we're under the main zipper closure when we're top stitching. Put my stitch length back to my length I use. And that's how it looks so far. When you look into the bag, you'll see from the top, you'll see only the exteriors. And when you're looking at the lining, you see your lining. I know this is an exterior I use for the pocket, but you'll see only your lining. Now we're going to put this to the side. We're going to go to finish our exterior and lining. So the first thing you want to do is mark the centers of your gusset and your main panels, your front and back. So you want to make sure you have your centers all marked. Once you have that marked, you're going to match your center points. So match the center point of the gusset to the bottom center point of your exterior. And you're going to pin it in place. So once you have the center point marked, then you come around here and line up these top edges, so the top corners on both sides. And this way here, what we can do is we can ease our fabrics between the top and the center to make sure that it is in evenly. I'm just clipping it in. Another thing you can do is add small snips within the seam allowance to your curves. And what that'll do is it opens up the fabric so it'll lay flatter for you, which is what I'm going to do. And this just helps prevent any puckers or anything, because like I said, it opens up that fabric and allows it to ease through the curve. But this gusset is fitting perfectly. Love it. just keep pinning. So I have it pinned. Now you can make these snips now, or you can make the snips as you're sewing. I just like to do it now, so I'm not stopping while I'm sewing. So I'm just keeping them within the seam allowance, not any further. And you'll see as I'm doing this, you see how this sort of doesn't want to lay as nicely and as flat as this. It really helps. It makes a huge difference. And then once we have these all snipped, we will sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So now it just lays nice and flat. So we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern, and it is easier to sew with your gusset face up. So you want your back or front, whichever one you're attaching right now, to be against the bed of your machine. And we're going to sew this using the seam allowance that is given in the pattern. I'm going to get out my extension table. Just going to make it easier. There we go. Just so I'm not trying to hold the bag up at the same time as I'm sewing. And I'm just going all the way around. Now, remember you have hardware up at the top here, so you may want to make sure that the hardware isn't getting in the way. It shouldn't, but it's always best to be safe. So we're going to check and make sure that it all looks good. And if you have any pleats or any puckers or anything, now is the time to fix them. Mine looks great. So if you had a pleat or a pucker, what you could do is go and unpick where it is and unpick a few stitches, you know, before and after. So maybe an inch before and an inch after, so you have a little bit of a 2-inch gap. What you'll do is you'll smooth it out, reclip it, then you back stitch over top of your previous stitches and stitch all along where that opening is and back stitch again back over the previous stitches. Locks in the previous stitches and it fixes that pucker. I'm going to go in and sew a second row of stitches just slightly away from the first stitches, so about a 1/16 of an inch away, and this is just for extra strength and security. Helps with the seams. You don't need to do this, just something I like to do. Sometimes I forget to do it, sometimes I remember, but I wanted to do it with this one just because of the curve. Look at how beautiful this looks so far. It's so pretty. So now we need to attach our remaining exterior panel, and you're doing the exact same thing that we did to attach the front here. Pin your centers, pin at the top, ease it in, make snips, and then sew it. And again, you could do that second row of stitching if you prefer. You don't have to, but you can. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to sew the second exterior to my gusset, and then I'll come back and then we will do the same thing to sew our, oh no, I won't come back. I'll assemble my lining, sorry, the same way we did the exterior. So you're going to do the exact same thing, attach your gusset to your lining. Maybe I will come back and I'll show you one side because we do have the zipper panel and this may make it a little bit tricky to sew. So I will come back, I'll show you how to sew one of the lining panels to the gusset, and then I'll go off and I will sew, you know what, we'll do it now instead of going off and coming back. So same thing, you're going to take your lining, find your center. You want to flip one of these out of the way, and you're going to line up the center marks. Pin the bottom center, and then same thing we did with the exterior. You're going to line up the top, pin it at the top, and I like to pin this straight edge just to hold it in place. Now this side, because you can't really open the zipper, you'll see it's stuck, so you kind of got to move that out of the way. Pin your top corner. This is broken. And then continue pinning all the way around. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add some snips to help ease in this panel. All right, so now to make those snips. All right, so now we're going to sew this. With the lining, you need to pay attention because the seam allowance does change. We start with one seam allowance at the top and we veer to a bigger seam allowance. And the reason for that is it makes it so that the lining fits nicely inside the bag, so it fits tighter inside the bag. So you'll want to pay attention to what the seam allowances are for this. And I'm coming up to where my zipper here is, and I also need to veer back to the seam allowance at the top. So I'm going to carefully do that while holding that zipper out of the way. And the reason why we start with one seam allowance and gradually increase to another is so that at the top everything lines up still. So that's why you have to be paying attention to your seam allowance and how it's going. You want everything to fit when you're done. Now with the lining, I don't go back through it and sew it a second time. I just do that with my exterior. check my, and I'm not gonna lie, if I get any puckers in the lining, I'm not usually super concerned because it is in the lining, and when it's like this, you never notice. When I turn it like this, I do notice, but also when it's filled, you don't notice it as much. But I don't think there is any. No, we're good. So now what you can do is you can trim your seam allowance. You can use some pinking shears to do that. So I'm going to trim my lining seam allowance, but I'm not going to trim it at the top because I want to have that excess up there for when I'm attaching my exterior and lining together. Just be careful you don't trim or cut anything away that you shouldn't. And then another little thing I like to do is press this open, and then I will stitch at the top within the seam allowance so that that stays pressed open. That seam allowance here stays open. And I'll do that on the other side. And the stitching just helps hold it open. Just a little extra tip. So now you'll see that the seam allowance is held open with my stitching. So that'll help when we go to attach the bag, when we go to finish it and put the bag all together. Now, what we're going to do is go and attach the second lining side and our second exterior side. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go off camera and do that, and then I'll come back and they'll all be attached, and then we'll head to the final assembly. So I'll be right back. All right, so I have the exterior and the lining both constructed. They're both attached to the gusset. So now we need to do the final assembly, and what that means is we're going to put the lining and exterior together. So you want to have your main zipper pocket or the zipper pocket unzipped so that you can turn the bag right sides out after. You want to turn the exterior so that it is right sides out, so you're looking at the nice side, the pretty side. And don't worry too much about pushing everything out. Just get it, you know, out like that. You don't have to get it all perfect because we're going to be turning it again and smushing it around. Now you're going to take your exterior and place it inside your lining. And you want to make sure again that your zippers open and close in the same direction as that zipper on your front. Now, she does say in the pattern that you want to make sure you match the exterior back with the lining side with the zipper. And unfortunately, because I want my zipper pocket or my zippers to open in the same direction, I totally forgot about that, and I should have did them in the opposite way. But because I want my zippers to go in the same direction, I'm doing it a bit different, a bit backwards to what she has in the pattern, and that's okay. It'll all still function. It just means I have two zipper pockets right beside each other. So what you want to do is you want to line up these seams here. So your side seams. And I did stitch the exterior, but I didn't get to finish the one side. So I'm going to stitch this other side down the same way that we did the lining, where we stitched those seams open. And this just helps get everything nicely lined up, helps with bulk. So I'm just stitching those two seams open, and I just went right across in one go, so you see that they're held open now. So lining up those seams with the gusset. I'm going to put some clips in the centers of this just to hold the gusset. Now I'm going to line up my center marks on my lining and exterior panels. I'm just adding a couple clips around it just to really help hold it while I pin the rest. Also, make sure your zipper panel is tucked out of the way. That main zipper closure should be down. You don't want to accidentally hit it when you're sewing. And again, I'm pinning my centers. Wow, that launched. So I'm just going to reach in and make sure this zipper is down and that one is down. They're both down. You may sort of feel like you're pulling on the lining here, and that's because, remember, we sewed it a little bit smaller, and if you feel like that, that's okay. Just pull it up out of the way so that everything lines up nicely. Keep pinning all the way around to ease everything in. And then you're going to sew this all the way around using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I put my extension table away, but I think I'm going to grab it back out. I just find it helps hold the bag up so it doesn't fall. Helps so that gravity is not working against me. All right, so I like to start on a side seam. Doesn't really make a difference, but that's just where I like to start. So we're going to start on a side seam, and then we're going to sew all these edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So back stitch at start and stop. Make sure that those seams there where your gusset and exterior meet, or gusset and lining, stay open. Now when we get to this part where the curve is, I'm just checking to make sure that I'm going to keep an accurate seam. I'm going to back stitch just to help secure that corner, strengthen it a bit. Take your time on this curve so that you get a really nice curve. If you have to go one stitch at a time, and what I mean by that is needle down, presser foot up, pivot your fabric a bit, put your presser foot back down, take one stitch, keep your needle down, presser foot up, pivot your fabric a bit, presser foot down, take one stitch. If you have to do this one stitch at a time to make sure you get a really nice curve, go for it. Just take your time, don't rush. And again, I'm back stitching here just to really help secure that top where I've turned. And see, I gotta lift this up because that's shifting under me. Again, making sure these seams stay open. Anytime I lift my presser foot, I always make sure my needle is in the down position. Some machines, like my industrial, do not automatically go into the down position. So I always make sure it's down before I pivot or lift my presser foot, I mean. So I'm just going around this curve slowly. And I'm coming back to where I started, so I'm going to back stitch. And now I'm going to trim my threads. So we're going to trim the seam allowance here in this curve, and that'll help your fabrics lay flat, and you'll get a nice curve when we turn the bag right sides out. And I'm trimming it with my pinking shears. So you can go ahead and clip all your seam allowances. So I've done the curves. Now I'm going to do this along the top edge here. If you don't have pinking shears and you're just using your regular scissors, on those curves, make some snips, but don't cut into your seam allowance, or their stitches, sorry. You don't want to snip them. If you accidentally do, just go back over it the way I explained previously. Back stitch, stitch over top of the previous stitches, go past where you snipped, and back stitch again. That locks in those previous stitches, but it also restitches that area that you accidentally snipped. So there it is, it's all trimmed. Now we need to turn the bag right sides out. And this is where it can be a little bit difficult, but it seems like this is turning quite easily. And I always try to push, I try not to pull on the bags, just because I have found when I used to pull on the bags to get them out, I used to break stitches. So now I find that I just push them out as much as I can. Sometimes you can't avoid it and you have to pull, but where I can, I definitely don't, where I can avoid it. I'm just grabbing my turning tool and I'm going to go inside the bag and turn out all my edges, like push them out. So this top corner here, I'm just pushing it out. Just getting it nice. You can go in and trim these corners more if you want. So trim down the bulk, which I think I will. So trim it on an angle like we normally would. That'll just help get rid of the bulk so that corner turns out a little bit nicer. There's one corner. One corner. I'm going to pull the other corner up to do that. So all four corners, I'm just trimming it like you would, say, if we were doing a slip pocket and you needed to trim those corners down. Anywhere that you need to trim bulk, it's the same thing. You're cutting it on an angle, avoiding cutting your stitches. All right. So I'm first going to push it out with my fingers, and then I'll go in with my tool. Oh yeah, that looks much better already. So pushing it out with my turning tool, just being careful. You don't want to push too hard where you break stitches. It looks so nice, so good. And then what I like to do is just take my turning tool and run it along the edge of the seam. That just helps kind of push it. So I'm just holding the seam and I'm right where the seam is and I'm running that through the seam. Okay, we're going to push the lining into the bag. Now, if you're like me and you don't have a flatbed machine, this might be hard for you to get under your presser foot because you can't really stitch on the exterior. So what I like to do is take my bag, turn it so it is lining sides out. Trying to get it as flat as I can. And then I'm going to add some clips all the way around the top edge. You can take this to your iron and iron it if you want. However, I've used vinyl here and I don't want to accidentally touch it and burn my bag or melt anything. Now, if you're worried about the bulk at the top here where the gusset and the exteriors meet, because we have those seams pressed open, if you're worried about it, you can go back and trim it down. You'll have to turn your bag right sides out and trim it all down so that it's not as much there, if you want. Now that the bag is stitched together, you can trim it down. So again, I'm going to use my extension table, sorry. And I am going to start on a side, but I'm going to start in the back because I want my back stitching to be hidden on this floral print here. So I'm going to start where the floral print is because it'll hide it with the thread and the dark material here. So now we're just going to top stitch around that entire edge, taking our time when we get to the bulk. If you need to use a humper jumper, please use a humper jumper. Use whatever tools you can to make this easier for you. Oops. Where did that come from? Also ensure that your zipper tail and your zipper are not in the way and your hardware is not in the way, so you're kind of holding a lot of stuff out of the way. Now I'm at this corner here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to take one extra stitch there, then I'm going to pivot. I just didn't want any angled stitches, and I'm going to take my time going around this curve. Making sure my fabrics stay nice and flat as I'm going. Now another thing you can do if you have a lot of bulk, which I do usually do, but I didn't here, of course, is you can use a seam whacker or a mallet and hammer your seams so that it flattens them more, and it'll make it so that your machine can get through it. Sometimes what I like to do is hand crank over those areas. So just like I'm doing now, I'll hand crank, and this will just make sure that I get all the stitches. So right here, one of my stitches I can see for some reason is not catching. There we go. Just make sure when you're moving your bag around that nothing is in the way. Always be checking that you don't have anything that shouldn't be under your needle. I'm coming back to where I started. So we want to trim our threads. Wow, the top stitching looks awesome. Now I know in the pattern we're supposed to close that pocket first. As you can see, I like to keep my pocket unsewn, so leave it open, because when I'm done my top stitching I like to go back in with my hand and get everything all flattened out all nicely. I like to push everything out. What I'll also do here is I will add clips around the edges to really help form this bag, and I'll leave it overnight just so that it can really help shape the bag. And then I'll take the clips off tomorrow. Pushing everything in. I just want to see how it looks. Look at how it looks. That's a beautiful bag. And orange is not normally my color, but I'm really liking the orange. Amazing. Loving it. So now we can close our lining. Sometimes I decide, oh, I don't want to add a bag label. But then when the bag is done, I decide, oh, I did want to add a bag label. What you can do is before you close up your lining pocket, you can go in and add that label where you want it on your bag before you close that opening. So you'd reach in, you'd find where you want to put it, and then you just put it on your bag. So we're going to stitch this closed. You can also stitch this by hand if you really want to get a really nice finished edge. You can also use a thread that matches. I figure it's in a pocket. No one's really going to see it, especially once the bag is full. trim all your threads. When I'm done the bags, I always go back through and make sure all my threads are trimmed down. I just do that as a quick double check once the bag is done. And that's after I've taken all my clips off the edges. I'll go through and make sure all the threads are done. Now we need to add our zipper. And I did stitch the end of my zipper here because I didn't want it coming open as I was trying to turn my bag. So I'm just going to unpick this. Super easy. Just go between the teeth and unpick it. So now I'm going to use my zipper helper to put my zipper on. I might have to actually cut my zipper a little bit shorter. That didn't go evenly. Of course it's going to fight me because I'm on camera. This is where I really fight with this to get it nice and even. I think because there's those stitches there still, I didn't get rid of them all. I'm going to pick them out and then attach my zipper pull. So what I'll do is I'll stop the camera, I'll attach my zipper pull. I just really want it to all line up nice and evenly. And then I'll come back and we will attach the zipper end to the end of our zipper tape. So I'll do that and I'll come back. Okie dokie, so we have the zipper installed. Now we're going to install our zipper end. And you will want to follow the manufacturer's instructions, but here's how I do it. So I fold the ends of my zipper so they go back towards each other. I'm going to use a bit of glue inside the zipper end. I will insert my zipper tape into the zipper end. And apparently this zipper likes to fight me today. Use one of these flat end screwdrivers. There we go. Just had to help it get in there. And then we will add the screw. Now, I never hold this in my hand. I always do it so it's against the table, and the reason for that is because if the screwdriver slips, you don't want to stab your hand. And sometimes I can get these, and sometimes I can't. We're going to need a set again, so I'm just going to place it off to the side for now. So there it is. The zipper end is installed with the zipper. Or the zipper pull, sorry. I love how it looks when you look down. And the gusset too, this was all part of the reason why I wanted to do it. When you look at the top of the bag from the outside, it's all the same. And then I just like how it adds a bit of contrast when you look inside the bag too. And I like that you can see my pocket really well. It's really pretty. So now we need to make our straps, our strap and our handles. So I'm making my straps, I've already made them, my handles, double-sided. So I do have a link to a PDF that I have written on how I make my double-sided handles or straps. So those are already done, but I'm going to show you how the instructions in the pattern tell you to make the crossbody strap and the handles. They're done the same way. So if you're using a quilting cotton for all these pieces, you're going to draw a line down the entire length of the handle or the strap. Then you're going to fold the long edges in to meet in the center and press it. However, do not press it so that it is touching in the middle. Leave a smidge of a space between, and that's because when you fold it, you don't want a lot of bulk here in the center, so it'll just fold a lot nicer if you don't have extra bulk. So about 1/16 of an inch away from each other so that you have, if you can see, a bit of a gap there. So then you're going to take that and you're going to press it all together, and it's going to look like this with the folded edges. And then what you'll do is you take your strap ends, if you're using strap ends, and you'll attach them to the end of your strap or handles so that it covers your raw ends. But if you're not using strap ends, what you will do is in the pattern, there is instructions for how far to fold this down. So you'll fold it down, you'll press it, and then you'll do the folding where you fold everything into the center, fold it again, and press it, and then you have no raw edges at all. And you'll do that to both sides if you're using quilting cotton for your crossbody strap and your handles. Now, if you're using something like vinyl or cork, something that you can't press with your iron, what you're going to do is the same thing as this. You're going to draw your line down the entire length of the strap. Then you're going to use some double-sided tape, place it on each side of the line, fold your long edges into the center, again leaving that little gap, fold them into the center, then fold it again in half. And this way here you end up with the same thing, and then you can attach your strap end to the end so that covers your raw edges, or you can do the same thing if you want, if your machine can handle it, and fold it over and then fold it again in half so that you have no raw edges again, just like we did for the cotton strap. And then you'll sew it all the way around. Now I sew my ends of my straps and my handles a little bit differently just so that I get a clean edge. And I will link that below for you in the description so you can see how I do it. But it all ends up with the same result. So I'm just going to show you how to do the strap. So all I'm doing is I've sewed across the edge using the seam allowance that was given in the pattern for folding it. I've sewn across, then I trim it on an angle here, and then I trim that bulk down. And then what I do is I turn it so it's right sides out, and I fold these raw edges in and under the strap there, or the end of the handle, whatever one you're working on. This is my crossbody strap. Just like that. And it gives the same result. I just like it. It looks really clean. Either method works, and I will link my little video that I have for this and how I do this because it goes into more detail in the description below. But I did want to explain to you how it is written in the pattern. And I'll also attach, in case you want to make your handles and your strap double-sided. You can also use webbing for this if you want, for these handles, and for the strap as well, if you want to be so that it's faster to make, I guess you could say, because your handles will already be done, and right now all you would have to do is attach them. And you can still use your strap ends on your webbing as well. There we go. So both ends are now turned. Now I'm going to stitch all the way around. And I actually am going to use strap ends on the end of this strap, but I still wanted to have my ends finished. If you're not finishing the ends like this and you're just attaching your strap end, a suggestion would be to use some fray stop or fray check on the ends just to prevent them from fraying and you get the little threads that stick out the edges of your strap end. Now normally what I would do is I would come to this end and I would back stitch here and then I would break my stitches and come back up, and that prevents twisting, sorry, but I'm not going to for this because I fix my twisting by taking my strap back to my iron and pressing it. I use a bit of water, so I spritz it with some water and I press it and it gets rid of the twisting for me. And I did that with my strap that I did that's double-sided, except for I just pressed on the one side, so the side that has quilting cotton, and they're not twisted. Because sometimes I find even when I go down one side, back stitch, come back and stitch back down the same side I started at, sometimes I find I still get the twisted strap. It doesn't seem to really matter too much. So I just do this. It works for me. Do what works for you. So here's my strap. It's all done. And you'll see it's a little bit twisted. That's okay. I'm going to go give it a press with my iron because as you see, these were twisted and now they're nice and flat. So I'm going to go give this a press with my iron and then I'll come back and we will attach all the hardware that we need to make our crossbody strap. And then I'll show you how we attach our handles as well. All right, so I've gotten that strap all pressed and now it's not twisted anymore, as you can see. So like I said, I just go all the way around. Sometimes I find when I do the start at both ends and go all the way down, it doesn't prevent the twisting. So I just find if I press it with my iron and spritz it with a little bit of water, it gets the twisting out and I have a nice flat strap. So now we need to install our hardware to make this a crossbody strap. So I'm going to grab my hardware. And I do have two strap ends that I'm going to install. And if you're using strap ends, depending on the style you have, it may be slightly different from mine, but you will want to follow the manufacturer's instructions for attaching your hardware. So for the slider, we will do that first. So you're going to take your slider, and if yours has a movable bar like mine does in the center, you can do it this way. If yours doesn't move, you'll just leave it centered. You'll bring the strap so that it goes up between the middle bar and the end bar, and then over the middle bar, just like that. And you can do that the same way with the movable bar in the middle. Because mine's movable, what I usually like to do is allow that bar in the middle to drop right down to the bottom. I put my strap through, then I flip it so that the bar goes back down to the bottom again. So now it's on top of my strap. You can see it there. And then I just put this back through so it ends up going over my middle bar just like that. I'm going to clip this in place because I am going to go off camera and install rivets on this. But before I install the rivets, I need to install my strap ends. Now, if you're not using strap ends and you're just adding a rivet, you can go ahead and do that. If you're adding strap ends but you don't have rivets, you can use a zipper foot and sew a box here and then sew an X in it, but you'll want to make sure you leave enough room between the end of your strap end and your slider so that you can be able to stitch around it. So again, you can stitch a box and then stitch an X in it. If you're not using the strap end hardware, you can do the same thing, stitch a box and stitch an X in it. All right. Seems like I have a few extra screws, which is good. So I like to use a bit of glue, just like I did for my zipper end. And this is just in case the screws fall out. This helps hold it in place. And then I'm just screwing it in, just like we did with the zipper end. And again, you may have different strap ends. You may have ones that you clamp together, or maybe they screw on differently. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions for attaching them. And then I'm going to pull my strap. Now, again, this is where you would want to measure so that you can get the presser foot and be able to sew a square with a box I mean with an X, wow, a box with an X in here if you're not using a rivet. I'm using a rivet, so I'm just going to add a clip here. I'll go off camera and add my rivet. Now, I want to make sure that this is facing up, this piece of hardware, the strap end, that it's up, so you see it right now. So I'm just going to keep pushing that out of the way. Keep pushing it out of the way, keep pushing it out of the way. It really isn't totally important, but just a personal preference for how that's done. And now I'm going to slide this slider, the swivel hook on. So I'm sliding it on, and you can see the swivel hook part is on the opposite side of my strap end. Then I'm going to do the same thing we did originally. I'm going to go up and over that middle bar. So right now, going over the middle bar. So it looks something like this when you're going over it. Just trying to move my hand out of the way. Now, with your swivel hook on this end and your slider against the table, take your final swivel hook and slide it on. So now when I'm looking at my strap, this swivel hook will be on the same side as the slider. Now we're going to add this strap end. And again, if you didn't finish your strap ends like I did, you may want to use some fray stop or fray check before you attach these strap ends to it. And I just want to make sure that I'm putting it so that the wrong side is on the wrong side. So the wrong side of the strap end. My strap end has sort of a texture on the back side of it. I'm just attaching my screws. Oh, I actually flipped it around. I gotta unscrew that quickly before it dries. I got it twisted. Look at that. Even as much as I was paying attention, I still got it all backwards. Just goes to show we all make mistakes. And the glue is already setting. It was already pretty sticky. All right. Just gonna make sure you may be wondering about my little tool set. I actually just, well, my husband got this for me at the dollar store because the screwdriver I was using was one of his, and I just found that it wasn't small enough for the hardware screws, so he just picked that up for me at our dollar store. So now I'm going to bring this and fold it, remove that glue, fold it around the swivel hook, just like that. And I'm going to add a clip, and then I'm going to punch holes in the strap and attach my rivets or Chicago screws. But again, you can sew a box without hitting the hardware, so use your zipper foot and sew a box with an X in it. Now I'll show you how to attach our handles. So you'll sew your handles the same way we sewed this, or you can use my method of double-sided straps. But if you're using cotton or faux leather, you'll do it the same way we sewed the crossbody strap. Once your handles are finished, you can attach your hardware if you are choosing to use any. You slide it up through the hardware, add a clip just to hold it in place. Then you're going to take it and make sure it's not twisted and slide it again up and over through the hardware, just like that. And that's how you do it. And then, oh, I'm just scrolling through, and it is mentioned in the pattern that you can sew a box with an X. I'm just seeing as I'm scrolling. Now, there is a measurement for how far you want to attach these onto your strap, so you'll want to use the measurement. So when you're coming up around, there's a measurement that you're going to make from the bottom up, and that's where this will line up with. So you'll measure from the bottom of your strap and make the mark. So the mark would be here, and then the bottom of your strap would line up with that mark, or your handle, sorry, not strap, would line up with that mark, and then you would attach your rivet, or again, sew a box with an X. So I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to go attach my handles, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how it all looks. So I've attached my handles and my crossbody strap, just like I said. Now again, if you don't have rivets, you can do as it says in the pattern and sew a box with an X in it, and that'll help secure them to your bag. I've also attached my crossbody strap. And what I really like about crossbody straps is you can wear it as a shoulder bag, or you can adjust it and go hands-free and wear it crossbody. So it's really nice to have a strap like this, an adjustable strap, when you're making this for someone else, because you never know how they prefer to wear their bag. So it's nice to have that as an option. And then you have the handles where you can carry it in your hand, on your arm, or even on your shoulder. And the design here of the bag means that it doesn't rub up in your armpit because it doesn't go straight across. It's cut out here for your armpit. Really excellent design feature. So I hope you enjoyed sewing the Isla bag along with me and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. Your bag is ready to be filled up and take it out to show off to the world. But before you do, don't forget to take lots of photos and share them on social media because I would love to see them. Thank you for sewing along with me. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.